Welcome to This Week in East Brunswick, the Township's own news and information program. This week we continue our series on historic sites in Middlesex County with a tour of the Cranbury Museum. In our studio, the library's assistant director, Sharon interviews the developer of the new 18th Central Shopping Center, and members of the Teen Library Corps act out some sports trivia. Our regular features include a garden tour with Middlesex County Agricultural Agent Pegi Howells. On Health Facts, local allergist Dr. Martin Rosenstein describes allergies for those who may be finding this season difficult. And on Consumer Aware, Adrian Eisner cautions against the use of all-terrain vehicles. But first, here's what's on Channel 8 next week. Monday at 10 a.m., it's Look Great, Feel Great with Lenore Kulik. At 10:30, Dolly Basta interviews comedian Rick Siegel on For Art's Sake. Tuesday at 7 p.m., it's Kids Stuff, produced by the Libraries of Middlesex. At 7:30, it's John Megliaro's Sports Talk, with an interview with Dr. David Scott, Director of Sports Medicine at Rutgers University. At 8 p.m., it's About East Brunswick with Mayor Fox, and his guest William Tanner, Director of Planning and Community Development. Wednesday at 3 p.m., it's Stories for the Kids, read by East Brunswick librarians. At 8 p.m., it's The Arts, produced by the Middlesex County Cultural and Heritage Commission. And we'll be back Thursday night at 7 and 8 p.m. with an all-new This Week in East Brunswick. And be sure to watch Thursday at 8:30 for Middlesex County Agricultural Agent Pegi Howells' special program on composting. Remember to check the Channel 8 program guide for repeats of all of our shows.
This summer, we've explored some of the historic sites of Middlesex County. The latest that we visited is the Cranbury Museum, located just off Main Street in the well-preserved town of Cranbury. Listen as curator Barbara Wallers describes the house and some of the artifacts to be seen within.
On behalf of the Cranbury Historical and Preservation Society, I welcome you to Cranbury and to the Cranbury Museum. I am Barbara Wallers and I serve as the volunteer curator of the museum. This was always a private residence up until around 1970. At that time, the Historical Society decided to purchase an old home in Cranbury to serve as a museum. We have been open about 15 years now. During the summer after we purchased this building, a whole corps of volunteers really tried to restore it and make it look like a small town New Jersey home might have looked during the 19th century. It has really been built in 3 stages, the center portion being the oldest, which dates about 1834. The front of the house was added sometime after the Civil War. We don't have an exact date on that. And then about 10 years ago, a new wing was added to the rear of the building, which is used for exhibits and meetings and things of that nature. The 2 ladies who started the museum, their portraits hang in the front parlor, were Amy Evans and Sarah Hoffman. Sarah Hoffman was curator of the museum up until 1985. In her honor is a lovely herb garden outside along the driveway, which is called Sarah's Garden. Sarah still often comes over and lends a hand at the museum and of course is a never-ending source of information for us. Most of the items in the museum have been donated. In fact, not most, just about all. I think I can really only name about 10 things that we have had to purchase. Majority of things have resided in homes here in Cranbury at one time or another. The town itself has been very supportive of us, and for this we are most appreciative, and I think this is why the museum looks the way it does, really. The oldest room, which we call the dining room of the museum, at the time that we purchased the museum, the lovely big old fireplace was all covered up with a wall. We knew we had to have a fireplace somewhere, and windows and doorways at the other walls indicated that this was the wall we should take down. When we took it down, we found the fireplace completely intact. We did, of course, have to add a new hearth and a new mantel. The fireplace equipment inside were the things that were used by the cook back in the 19th century and in the 18th century. One very interesting item is the very long called serving spoon. It's a solid piece of hickory, and it was used to fill pies and all that were in the oven, which is inside of the fireplace. Very often fireplaces were built with a big beehive oven to one side. In this particular fireplace, the oven itself was within the confines of the fireplace. The old tavern table in the dining room came from the Cranbury Inn, which still serves as a restaurant or inn today. It was purchased at an auction, back around 1930, I understand, for $1. It has proved to be a very good investment. Some of the other interesting items in the dining room, the coin silver teaspoons that are hanging in a rack, some of those date back to the late 18th century. The first 2 spoons, in fact, have the date of 1791 engraved on them. The old samplers hanging on the wall are all early 1800s. One, in proper light, it's quite worn, but one can see that it was made in Cranbury, New Jersey. It has been signed at the bottom. The samplers, of course, were the handiwork done by young girls, probably 8 to 12 years old. They're amazing examples of stitchery and how they practice their alphabet and numbers. The china cabinet in the corner is filled with American pressed glass and some very early English china. Some handsome old Davenport china to be found in there, the wedding band pattern, some Chelsea china. The only thing in this room that we really had to purchase was the chandelier. We just could not find an old chandelier, so we had a reproduction of a tin chandelier made. When it came, of course, it was very shiny, so we had to leave it outside to give it a weathered look. The braided rug on the floor, this was made in Cranbury, and it was made by a resident's grandfather's old uniforms and army blankets from the First World War. She gave it to us and said she thought it really should be part of the museum here. The next room that we go into was just a shed, really, at the time the structure was built. Over the years, it became the actual working kitchen of this particular residence. The old stove, of course, is a turn-of-the-century stove. It once resided in one of the large old homes along Main Street. Many of the items in the kitchen sort of show the Americans' interest in gadgetry, I think. We tried to simplify life. Cooking over an open stove was not quite as glamorous and romantic that we picture it today. So as the new century dawned, many kinds of cast iron gadgets were made for the kitchen. The old waffle iron, of course, has the ball bearing and can be simply flipped over. The irons had removable handles, could be heated, as you can see on the stove, and then you would simply take the handle off and put it on a hot iron to do your ironing. Over in the little table in the corner, there are 2 wonderful gadgets. One is a raisin seeder. Today, when you buy a box of raisins, of course, it says that they are seedless. Back in the late 1800s, they were not seedless, and you had to seed your raisins, and raisins were used a great deal more in cooking than we do use them today. The other little gadget attached to the table was a cherry pitter. In fact, this was a double one. You could pit 2 cherries at one time. The large canister on this table was found in an antique shop down in southern New Jersey a few years ago. If you look very closely at it, you'll see that it says Cranbury, New Jersey on it. One of the major industries here in the late 1800s was the J.S. Silver Spice Company, and many of the items in the kitchen pertain to this particular spice mill. There's some old bill of sales on the wall. Many of the large red tins also came from the J.S. Silver's company. As you can notice, the ceiling has grown much taller as we enter the parlor, which was built sometime after the Civil War. There is a large fireplace here, but I doubt that it was ever used as a working fireplace. By the time the front of the home was added, they were using a Franklin-type stove, such as the one that you see here. In the center of the room is a handsome old lighting fixture. This, of course, was an oil lamp, but has been electrified today. As we move on upstairs, we have 2 bedrooms and a sewing room. The back bedroom, or what we refer to as the children's room, is the original sleeping quarters for the entire family. One entered this through a little staircase next to the fireplace in the old dining room. I do hope that sometime you will come and visit us. We are open every Saturday and Sunday from 1 until 4 o'clock, and costumed hostesses will be very happy to take you through the museum. On the 27th of September, we are having a house tour at which 5 different homes are open. The museum will be open that day, and we would be happy to have you come and enjoy what we think is a very special town.
Do you want to know how many home runs Reggie Jackson hit in the 1977 World Series?
Do you want to know how to shoot a good set shot?
Do you want to know when the first college football game was played?
To find the answers to these and any other sports questions you might have, check out your East Brunswick Public Library Sportsbook section. They have books regarding statistics, how-tos, and even the history of your favorite sport. So check out the East Brunswick Public Library. They know the score.
Hi, this is Sharon Karmazin at the library for This Week in East Brunswick. Today I'm pleased to have with me Richard Cabot, who is the developer of the new 18 Central Shopping Center, which is getting ready for its grand opening on Route 18. Welcome, Richard.
Good morning.
We're pleased to have 18 Central as our new neighbor on Route 18. Can you tell me how you picked the site?
We are pleased to be your new neighbor here. We picked the site in conjunction with initially the Gap stores, who was one of the anchor tenants in the project, who is familiar with the central New Jersey area and wanted a better store, if you will. We're aware that the Route 18 corridor is a dominant commercial shopping strip, and we were fortunate to be able to locate several pieces of ground that we could put together to create a shopping center there to hopefully bring a little more uplifted shopping experience to the consumers around here.
Well, as people who live in East Brunswick know, we've got lots of shopping on Route 18.
You sure do.
Tell me how 18 Central will be different.
Well, we've tried to approach it from a planning standpoint a little differently than other developers have in the past, in that we initially designed a concept plan for the layout of that shopping center and then went out and sought the tenants that we thought would work well together and that would also serve the needs that might not otherwise be being served now in the marketplace. Conran's, for argument's sake, who can supply housewares and furniture items for all of those young families that are coming into all the new developments in and around the East Brunswick area. And certainly the other tenants, Kids R Us, working well in a young family kind of environment. So we approached it from a planning standpoint in terms of mix of tenants, and from an architectural standpoint, we really wanted to do something bold and different from anything else that exists around, and hopefully we've achieved that with some very light, bright colors and a very contemporary architectural style.
Well, already you're doing something new and different with a big, big grand opening week, and we here at the library are going to be part of that too. Maybe you can tell our viewers a little bit about what's going to be happening and when.
Well, there will be a week's worth of festivities beginning on Saturday, April 22nd, and those festivities...
August, right?
I'm sorry, August 22nd, I apologize. But starting Saturday afternoon with a basic ribbon cutting ceremony, there'll be a week's worth of music and dance and jugglers and mimes and magicians and hot air balloons and giveaways and fashion shows and makeovers and whatnot that all the stores are participating in, and as we as a developer have put together, so that there'll be something for everybody, man, woman, and child, so that when they come to the center they can have a good time as well as hopefully finding those things that they want to buy. And we're particularly pleased with this grand opening because not only do we, of course, want to put the shopping center on the map and introduce ourselves as new neighbors in this community, but to the extent that we can help an existing institution in the community, a fine institution like the Friends of the Library and the library itself, which is clearly one of the finest libraries in the state of New Jersey, and the Friends of the Library doing such a magnificent job supporting it, raising money for it, adding to it. We will be conducting a raffle that'll be going on for the course of the week with the drawing at the end, and the entire proceeds of that raffle will be donated to the library through the Friends of the Library, and all of the Friends members are participating with us by selling raffle tickets and whatnot. So we want to introduce ourselves as members of the community, and we're pleased to be of help to such a fine institution here.
Well, we're of course very excited at the prospect of the funds that will be raised through the raffle. I have seen the list of prizes and they are very impressive, all the way from many, many gift certificates from the new retailers who are coming into the center to a very exciting 4-day getaway weekend at Newport Beach, California, and who wouldn't like to have that for some weekend soon. So we would like to let people know that the Friends will be selling tickets at the center, afternoons and evenings from the 22nd until the drawing on the 29th. Raffle donations are $1 per chance. There will be members, as Richard was saying, at the center. Can you tell us about any of the other activities that are going to be happening specifically?
Well, during the course of the week, we will have storytelling going on at Barnes & Noble with adult supervision for the children. We will have makeovers being conducted in and around the Cosmetics Plus store. There will be fashion shows put on by The Gap and, I believe, Finders Keepers, which will not only show the latest fashions, but also show a little something about coordinating outfits. I know that in the Athlete's Foot store, or through the Athlete's Foot store, there'll be an aerobics and jazzercise demonstration. The Wiz, which is a consumer electronics retailer, will have music going on. I think there'll be some rock bands and some country and western singers as well.
And all these things are free for the public.
All of these things are free throughout the course of the week. I'm quite sure there'll be some giveaways at the various stores. We'd like everybody to come. We'd like everybody to participate. We'd like everybody to become familiar with your new neighbors.
And that's Route 18, on Route 18. Where about on Route 18?
Route 18, across from Edgeboro Road, next to Loman's Plaza.
Well, I am sure that we can expect lots and lots of people from the Friends and others to come out to the opening with all these exciting activities. I'd like to thank you for being my guest today, and to say this is Sharon Karmazin from the library for This Week in East Brunswick. Until next time.
Hi, this is Peggy Ballister-Howells, Middlesex County Agricultural Agent, with my assistant, Natasha. We're here today in my front garden to show you all the beautiful flowers that are in bloom at this time of year. One of my favorite flowers is the dahlia, which right over here we have a spectacular dark red and white one. If you notice, there is a cage around the plant, and that's because the dahlias have a tendency to run along the ground if they aren't supported in some manner. We also have a much smaller flowered variety, almost looks like a daisy, a very pretty white and yellow one that's over here on my left. But most spectacular in the garden at this time of year are the zinnias. The zinnias are just in full color, in gorgeous bloom. We have a cluster of orange ones towards the front, but the mixed zinnias probably have the biggest splash. My favorite zinnia is the hybrid red zinnia, Big Red it's called, that has a beautiful deep red color that's over here behind the miniature roses. It blooms all summer, is resistant to some of the diseases that are commonly problems on zinnias, and just blooms and blooms all summer long. Of course, we have the calendulas, which come up from seed. I don't even have to plant them, and the marigolds. The chrysanthemums are in bud and will be blooming by the end of the summer. One of my favorite perennials that's in the garden right now is the purple coneflower, which is pretty from the time it first starts to bloom, and even the seed pods can be collected as dried flowers. Something unusual that is blooming and catches everybody's attention are the hibiscus blooms, which are enormous and very, very eye-catching. Of course, as the summer comes to an end, many of these will die back and will have to be replanted, but the perennials will be back again next year. And we'll see you next week here in my garden.
And now for Health Facts with Dr. Martin Rosenstein, an allergist practicing in East Brunswick.
An allergy may be defined as an undesirable physiologic event mediated by a variety of different immunologic reactions. Thus, today, with our present knowledge in medicine, we can have a clearer picture of what an allergy truly is. However, the science of allergy wasn't always this clear-cut. Allergic disease is as old as history itself, with references to asthma as a clinical entity being found in the Bible. Lucretius, over 2,000 years ago, was attributed with the statement, "One man's meat is another man's poison." It wasn't until the early 20th century when allergy changed from a descriptive science to an action science. In its early years, allergy was poorly understood by the medical profession, even including those practitioners working in the field itself. It thus came to be regarded as almost a black science. This regard caused problematic feelings toward allergy that exist to this day. There were and still are those in the medical profession and beyond who discredit the role of allergy. Equally as problematic, there were and still are those who tend to place any and all physiologic malfunctions under the wastebasket term of allergy. This is equally wrong and is frequently just an excuse for saying, I don't know why this is occurring. It is often easier to say it is an allergy, whether or not this is true. Over the last 40 years, with a marked increase in the science of immunology, the study of our body's defense mechanisms against infection and cancer, it has been learned that allergy is a part of this system. Much has been learned about the mechanism and the substances that exist as mediators. Much more is left to be discovered and understood, but with today's knowledge alone, we no longer must doubt allergy's importance or attribute every condition to it. How then can we determine if a person has an allergy, and if so, what it is? This should be done by consulting the allergist or other healthcare professional. He or she will then go through a systematic approach to determine if the condition falls under the category of allergy and to help discover what the offending substance or substances are. When a patient enters my office, the most important part of the visit is the history, where we sit down and discuss the problem. I try to determine the sequence of development of the disease, the sum of symptoms comprising the disease, factors influencing it, as well as other medical problems and family history which may influence the condition. Allergy, if it exists, does not exist in a vacuum, and all these factors have a bearing. At this point in the visit, it often becomes clear that the patient's problem is not allergic at all, or that the allergy is secondary to some other medical problem that should be dealt with first. In either event, the patient should be advised and directed to the healthcare professional who can be of help. The second part of the initial visit is the physical examination. This part helps to confirm or deny observations made during the history and is vital to the investigation. The last part of the diagnostic process consists of laboratory and related procedures, including x-rays, blood work, patient diaries, and allergy testing. Allergy testing, be it the more usually used skin testing, or the blood or RAS testing, or any other form of testing, is just a laboratory test. It should be used to help make a diagnosis only after a careful history and physical examination have been performed, not instead of them. By this point, the scope of the condition should be narrowed down, and items to be tested should almost always be limited. The results should be carefully interpreted by the allergist or other healthcare professional. Just because you have a set of symptoms and say a positive skin test to ragweed does not necessarily mean that one is causing the other. This can only be evaluated if a careful history and physical examination has first been performed. I am Dr. Martin Rosenstein, and this has been Health Facts.
I'm Adrienne Eisner, Director of the East Brunswick Consumer Affairs Office. There has been a dramatic increase in injuries and deaths associated with ATVs. ATVs are motorized cycles with 3 or 4 large, soft tires. They are designed for off-road use. Most ATVs are sold for recreational purposes. In recent years, their popularity and sales have soared. But in 1986, the Consumer Product Safety Commission reported over 86,000 ATV-related injuries treated in hospital emergency rooms. Almost half of the injured persons were under the age of 16. The average risk of injury from ATV riding is high. Over its estimated 7-year life, the average ATV has a 1 in 3 chance of being involved in an accident resulting in injury. The majority of accidents occurred when the ATV overturned after hitting a terrain irregularity or obstacle, or while turning or traversing a slope. Here are some important precautions for ATV users. Children under 12 years of age should not operate any ATV. ATVs are difficult to ride and require constant attention to avoid accidents. A hands-on training course is necessary for all ATV operators. Inexperienced drivers in their first month of using an ATV have 13 times the average risk of injury. Beginning drivers should receive a training course from certified instructors, and basic maneuvers taught in training should be practiced regularly on safe terrain. Children should ride only under close adult supervision. The use of helmets is strongly recommended. ATVs are designed for one driver and no passengers. ATVs should not be operated on paved roads where they are difficult to control. Although the stability of all ATVs is low, the stability of four-wheeled ATVs is better than the stability of the three-wheeled ATVs. Before you ride an ATV, always read the owner's instruction manual and follow the manufacturer's guidance for use, maintenance, and pre-use checks. If you have any further questions or problems, please contact us at the East Brunswick Consumer Affairs Office. We're there in our office Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. The telephone number is 390-6954. Thank you for joining me on Consumer Aware. See you again next time.